So Judge Juan Merchan was supposed to rule on a mistrial motion today after the Supreme Court held last June that not only is the President of the United States, any president, immune from criminal prosecution for his official acts, these prosecutors also can't take evidence and use evidence that's subject to presidential immunity. And that's exactly what Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo, a Biden-Harris Justice Department political operative, and this Democrat Judge Juan Merchan, whose daughter, Lauren Merchan's raising money off this case requiring Judge Merchan's recusal, they let in evidence of President Trump's conversations with his White House top officials, Hope Hicks and Madeline. Those conversations are clearly subject to presidential immunity. They clearly could not come into evidence. Bragg and Colangelo fought hard against Trump's lawyers to bring them into evidence, and Judge Merchan let them in, of course, because he's a hack. And so now Judge Merchan has to declare a mistrial in this case. There are so many reversible errors in this case. It's a bogus case. 34 campaign finance felonies for a businessman settling a nuisance claim from 7 years prior and putting it in his private books as a legal expense. I don't know what the hell else you would call it. This case is a dog. Let's see what Judge Merchan does. I don't know why there needs to be a delay for another week. And then a week after that, if he doesn't declare a mistrial on the 19th, Trump will be sentenced on November 26th. So let's ask Judge Merchan this. Does he really think that he's going to send the president-elect of the United States to Rikers Island instead of letting the American people send President Trump back to the White House? If Judge Merchan does this, is he looking? I'm not advocating for this, but is he looking for a civil war? What the hell does Judge Merchan think will happen if this partisan Democrat judge, corrupt judge, because his daughter is raising money off of this case requiring his recusal? What does Merchan think is going to happen if you send the president-elect of the United States to Rikers Island on bogus charges when the American people just elected that president-elect in an overwhelming landslide, 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states? It is time for Judge Merchan to back off, to take the country back from the cliff. This is very dangerous where this is heading. We've been talking about this on this show for over 2.5 years, since Joe Biden ordered the unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful home raid on President Trump for presidential records Trump was allowed to have in the office of former president under the Presidential Records Act. And that's what this whole lawfare against Trump is about. Trump, remember what happened in 2016. Hillary Clinton, as the Secretary of State, had her illegal home server with our nation's most classified secrets. More problematically for Hillary, it had evidence of the Clinton Foundation pay-for-play foreign bribery schemes. They're taking tens of millions of dollars into the Clinton Foundation. It pays for their lavish lifestyle for the Clintons. They're taking this money from our foreign adversaries, foreign entities. What did Hillary do as Secretary of State in exchange for those donations? And maybe that home server had that evidence, but Hillary took BleachBit to it. She took hammers to the smartphones. Remember, she famously tried to destroy that evidence. But maybe, just maybe, the Russians hacked her illegal home server, and they had that evidence. And the Clintons, the Obama White House, Joe Biden as vice president, Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, maybe they were worried that that server would leak before the 2016 election. So what happened? You had Perkins Coie come up with the Steele dossier, a fake Russian collusion hoax. They laundered it through our intel agencies and our Justice Department. They got illegal spy warrants through the FISA courts on then candidate Donald Trump. They continued to spy on him as the president of the United States. And why did they do this? If this hacked material came out with the Clinton Foundation pay-for-play foreign bribery schemes, they wanted to be able to say it was a campaign dirty trick by Trump. He was colluding with the Russians. And you say, that sounds crazy. How could you possibly think that? Well, guess what? These Democrat operatives did the same thing in 2020 with Hunter Biden's laptop of the Biden family corruption. Remember, the CIA worked with the 51 former intel officials to say that this had all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign. The laptop couldn't be trusted. They deplatformed the New York Post. The government worked with the big tech platforms to take the New York Post off big tech, off the internet, right? So you couldn't read the story. That would have swung the election if people knew about this corruption. And so Trump had to fight for 4 years to get the Crossfire hurricane records declassified. The day before he left office, he declassified them via presidential order. Then they ran to Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff from the intel agencies and law enforcement, and said, you can't release these. You'll violate the Privacy Act. That is a crime if you do that. So Mark Meadows, the day they left office, January 20th, 2021, the day they left office, Mark Meadows sent a memo saying, okay, do your Privacy Act review and then get out these Crossfire hurricane records. Well, guess what? They didn't do that. Instead, they raided Trump for Crossfire hurricane. They raided him, and then they indicted him for espionage for having his presidential records, which he's allowed to have. Remember, they put the cover sheets for the classified documents, they staged them to take a photo of staged evidence to put out to try to hurt Trump politically. Unfortunately, Jack Smith drew Judge Cannon, and Jay Bratt drew Judge Cannon, so they knew that Cannon was going to be a fair judge, and so they did this unprecedented second indictment of the same defendant in a different venue in D.C. for January 6th, and then they worked with these other prosecutors, Fani Willis and her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, Tish James up in New York, Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo from the Biden Justice Department. They ran this lawfare because they tried to destroy Trump financially, politically, legally. They wanted Trump to die in prison instead of going back into the White House to declassify Crossfire hurricane. And when it looked like that wasn't going to stop him, they underfunded his Secret Service protection, and Joe Biden said he's the gravest threat to our democracy and put a bullseye in his head. So you tell me what President Trump should do on day one. I think he should publicly release Crossfire hurricane on day one so the American people can see the biggest scandal in American history. Law enforcement and intel agencies working with a presidential campaign to take out a rival and then take out the president of the United States.